Welcome to AZ Learning, where every story becomes an adventure in history, geography, science, and maths. Today we are exploring the language of The History of the Secret of the Great Wall of China, one of the books in the World Wonders Adventure series. Imagine building a 13,000-mile-long backyard fort to play a giant game of defense. As we go, try to picture the sights, sounds, and people of ancient China coming to life around you. A kingdom is a country ruled by a king or queen. Ancient China began as many small kingdoms, each like a single puzzle piece on a table. But when one ruler takes over all those neighbors, it becomes an empire. An empire is a massive group of countries or lands controlled by one powerful ruler. Imagine that single puzzle piece grows to cover the whole map. The person at the center of all that land is the emperor. An emperor is the supreme ruler of an empire. For example, the first emperor of China ordered the Great Wall to be built. Imagine a ruler sitting in a palace of red and gold, wearing robes of fine golden silk. When an emperor passes their power down through their family for a long time, they form a dynasty. A dynasty is a family of rulers who maintain power over a long period of history. For example, the Ming Dynasty ruled for nearly 300 years. Imagine a long family tree where the crown passes from a parent to a child and then to a grandchild. Look at the long line marking the edge of this map. That is a border. A border is the outer edge where a country's land ends. For example, China's northern border stretched for thousands of miles across mountains and deserts. Imagine drawing a line in the sand to show exactly where your side of the beach stops. Here is a quick question. Who rules an empire? An emperor. Managing a border this long is a massive challenge. To keep a territory of this size together, the empire would eventually have to build on a scale the world had never seen before. The biggest challenge to that long border came from people who were nomadic. Nomadic means living by traveling from place to place without a permanent home. These tribes moved their tents and horse herds to find fresh grass. Sometimes these fast-moving groups launched an invasion. An invasion is when an army enters a country by force to take control. Imagine uninvited guests suddenly breaking through your front gate. To protect the families living inside the border, the empire needed a strong defense. Defense is the act of protecting something from attack. They decided that a permanent stone wall was the best way to block an enemy on horseback. Imagine holding up a thick shield to stop someone from running past you. They used fortification to make the border stronger. Fortification is the act of strengthening an area to make it harder to attack, like replacing a wooden fence with stone and brick. This created a massive fortress. A fortress is a heavily protected and secure building or place. For example, this fortress was built in the desert to guard the road. Imagine a giant, unbreakable castle standing in the middle of an open plain. If someone is moving from place to place without a permanent home, are they a fortress or nomadic? Nomadic. Because the neighbors to the north were so fast and mobile, the empire built these permanent stone fortifications to act as a solid, unmoving anchor for their defense. Look at the jagged stone edge at the very top of the wall. That is a parapet.
A parapet is a low, protective wall along the edge of a roof or walkway, often with gaps to shoot through. For example, guards crouched behind the parapet to stay safe from arrows. Imagine ducking behind a brick fence and peeking through the gaps. That parapet is part of a watchtower. A watchtower is a tall structure used by guards to look out for danger. For example, these towers allowed guards to see the dust from enemy horses miles away. Imagine climbing to the highest branch of a tree to see across the whole neighborhood. If a guard saw a threat, they lit a beacon. A beacon is a fire or light set up in a high place as a warning. That smoke was a signal. A signal is a movement or sound that passes information. For example, lighting a smoky fire told the next tower exactly how many attackers were coming. Imagine waving a flashlight 3 times to tell your friend the coast is clear. Because this wall stretches over mountains and through valleys, it is a famous landmark. A landmark is a feature of a landscape that is easily recognized from far away. Millions of people visit this landmark every year. Imagine a giant sign pointing right to the most famous spot in your town. Where would you light a fire to send a message? On a beacon. Because each tower could see the next, a fire on one tower could send a message across the whole empire faster than any horse could run. The plans for these defenses were made by a general. A general is a high-ranking officer in the army who decides where to build and where to move troops. But the actual work was done by the soldiers. A soldier is a person who serves in an army. For example, soldiers stood guard in the freezing wind at the top of the mountains. These troops lived together in a garrison. A garrison is a group of troops stationed in a fortress to defend it. These soldiers cooked their meals and practiced with their weapons right inside the wall's towers. Imagine a busy camp where everyone works together to guard the entrance. Today, the battles are long over, and the wall is part of our shared heritage. Heritage is the history, traditions, and buildings passed down from earlier generations. Preserving these stones helps us remember the stories of the people who lived here. Imagine a precious family treasure handed down to you by your great-grandparents. High towers and thick stone can block a path, but they cannot think. The strongest fortress in the world only works when there are dedicated people inside to guard it. Now we can see how all these pieces fit together. An emperor's soldiers stood at the stone parapets to send signals and defend the empire's borders. Let's see if you can recognize these parts of the wall in action. I will describe 5 things we saw today. See if you know what they are called. First, a tall structure for keeping watch. That is a watchtower. Second, the supreme ruler of an empire, an emperor. Third, a smoky fire used to send a warning. That's a beacon. Fourth, a family of rulers over a long period of history, a dynasty. And fifth, the edge of a map where a country ends. That is a border. Great job! Now you can see how each of these words helped build the story of the wall. This book is part of the World Wonders Adventure series, where we explore the most amazing places on Earth. Words are the building blocks we use to understand our history. Keep exploring, and we will see you next time.